He was 20 years old. A benching at a World Cup. A coach's career in ruins. And a 30-year-old secret dragged into the light. This is the story of how one young midfielder's playing time became the biggest scandal in modern American soccer history. 52 minutes. That's all he played at the 2022 World Cup. 52 minutes that would burn a federation to the ground. What the public didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that the coach who benched him had a secret. And the players' parents knew exactly where it was buried. But to understand how it all unravelled, we have to go back to a hospital in Sunderland, England, November of 2002. Part 1. Soccer Royalty. On November 13th, 2002, Giovanni Reyna was born into something almost no American footballer has ever been born into: a bloodline. His father, Claudio Reyna, was the captain of the United States men's national team, a 2002 World Cup star, a midfielder who had worn the shirts of Rangers, of Sunderland, of Manchester City. His mother, Danielle Egan Reyna, was a former US women's national team player herself, schooled in the dynasty that was University of North Carolina women's soccer. And his very name was a tribute. Giovanni, for Giovanni van Bronckhorst, Claudio's old teammate at Rangers. He didn't choose football. Football chose him before he could walk. The family eventually settled back in New Jersey, and the boy who would be called Gio began doing what was expected of him, playing and standing out. He landed in the New York City FC Academy, the breeding ground for the next generation of American talent. And from very early on, scouts noticed something that the Reyna name couldn't manufacture: his left foot, his vision. The way he saw passes that 15-year-olds simply don't see. He had dual citizenship, American through his parents, English by birth. England came calling. So did the United States. Gio chose the country his father had once captained. Part 2. The Prodigy. Summer 2019, 16 years old. Gio Reyna packs his life up in New Jersey and signs with one of the most respected youth development clubs on the planet, Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund had a track record: Pulisic, Sancho, Haaland. And now, this American teenager with the famous last name. He didn't take long. January 18th, 2020. Away at Augsburg. Lucien Favre brings him on. And in that single moment, Giovanni Reyna becomes the youngest American ever to play in the Bundesliga. 17 years and 2 months old. Then came the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain, the biggest stage club football has. And Gio Reyna walked onto it and provided an assist. 17 years, 97 days, the youngest American ever to play in the Champions League. And in doing so, he overtook Christian Pulisic in the record books. A few weeks later, he became Dortmund's youngest ever goalscorer in the DFB Pokal. 17 years, 83 days old. The American press was already running out of superlatives. Generational. The most gifted American attacker of his era. November 2020. Aged 17, he made his debut for the United States. The bloodline closed its circle. A new golden generation was forming around him. Pulisic, McKennie, Musa, Dest. And in the middle of it all, the kid with the famous name and the magic left foot. Part 3. cracks. The story was supposed to be linear. It wasn't. Through 2021 and into 2022, Reyna's body kept failing him. Hamstring, muscle tear, hamstring again. Every time momentum gathered, it stalled. He was in the Dortmund side, then out, then in, then out. A teenager learning how fragile a career can be when your own legs won't cooperate. And so, when the United States arrived in Qatar for the 2022 World Cup, Gio Reyna arrived with them, but not fully fit. Not the player he was supposed to be. And the head coach, Greg Berhalter, had a decision to make. Part 4. The benching. Before the tournament began, according to multiple reports, Berhalter pulled Reyna aside and told him the truth. His role at this World Cup would be very limited. Reyna, by every account, was devastated. This was his moment, the stage his entire life had pointed toward, and his coach was telling him he wouldn't really be on it. What happened next, according to reports that emerged later, was that Reyna's effort and attitude in training reportedly dropped. He was, according to those reports, nearly sent home from the tournament. There was, by multiple accounts, a team meeting. Reyna apologized to his teammates. He stayed, and then he played. Barely. 52 minutes across the entire United States run to the round of 16. 4 games, a handful of cameos. That was Gio Reyna's 2022 World Cup. The Netherlands knocked the United States out. Berhalter left Qatar with his reputation enhanced, and the Reyna story, in public, looked like a footnote. Inside the family, it was anything but. Part 5. The Scandal. December 2022. Berhalter, still riding the goodwill of a respectable tournament, speaks at a leadership summit. He tells a story. He doesn't name anyone. He talks about a player whose behavior was so poor in camp that the staff seriously considered sending him home. A player who, in Berhalter's words, hadn't met expectations on and off the field. Within hours, the media had identified the player. It was Gio Reyna. In the Reyna household, a line had been crossed. In January 2023, according to the subsequent investigation, Danielle Reyna, Gio's mother, picked up the phone. She called Ernie Stewart, the sporting director of US Soccer, and she told US Soccer officials about something that had happened more than 30 years earlier. Something almost no one alive still remembered. The year was 1991. The place was the University of North Carolina. Berhalter was an 18-year-old freshman. What follows is stated as Berhalter himself described it publicly in January 2023. In 1991, after a night of drinking, Berhalter and his then-girlfriend Rosalind had an argument outside a bar. During that argument, he kicked her in the legs. Law enforcement was never involved. Berhalter sought counseling. The couple separated for several months, eventually reconciled, and later married. And here is the thread that tied it all together. Danielle Reyna, Gio's mother, had been Rosalind's college roommate. She had known about this incident for decades. At the same time, according to the investigation, Gio's father, Claudio Reyna, had been messaging US Soccer officials about his son's role at the World Cup. Repeatedly. On January 3, 2023, Berhalter went public himself. In a written statement, he said someone had tried to use a 30-year-old mistake to end his career. American soccer had never seen anything like it. A sitting national team head coach, a former captain, a World Cup-tied teenager, a 30-year-old domestic incident. All of it in public. Part 6. The Investigation. US Soccer commissioned an independent investigation. The law firm Alston and Bird was hired to find out what had actually happened. The findings were released in March 2023. They were not kind to anyone. According to investigators, the Reyna family had been pressuring US Soccer about Gio's playing time since at least 2016. Years before the World Cup. Years before the benching. Investigators flagged one comment in particular. Claudio Reyna reportedly told US Soccer officials, quote, "You guys don't even know what we know about Greg." The investigation treated that as implied leverage. But, and this is crucial, the investigation did not substantiate Berhalter's specific allegation of blackmail. The family's conduct was described as embarrassing interference. It was not found to be blackmail. So no clean villain, no clean victim. A coach with a real, documented incident in his past. A family that had crossed lines for years. And in the middle of it all, a 20-year-old kid who hadn't asked for any of it. Part 7. Fallout. Claudio Reyna resigned his role as sporting director at Austin FC in 2023. His career in American soccer administration was, effectively, over. And then, in June 2023, in a decision that stunned much of the American soccer public, US Soccer rehired Greg Berhalter as head coach of the national team. The same coach, the same federation. As if the entire saga had ended in a draw. For Gio Reyna, there was no such restoration. At Dortmund, his role shrank. The minutes dried up. The injuries kept coming. January 2024.
A loan move to Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. A chance to reset. He barely played. The loan was, by every honest assessment, a flop. He returned to Dortmund. He still wasn't really a starter. The generational hype that had once orbited him had quietly drifted away. Summer 2025. A permanent transfer to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Reported fee around €7.5 million. Contract through 2028. For the player who had once overtaken Pulisic in the record books, €7.5 million was, quietly, a verdict. At Gladbach, the 2025-26 season has been a squad role. Around 19 appearances. 1 goal at the time of writing. Useful, not transformative. These are not the numbers anyone expected of him. And every interview, every profile, every match preview, somewhere the same phrase. The scandal guy. The talents never left. The story buried it. Part 8. Redemption. In 2026, Giovanni Reyna is 23 years old. He has publicly said that he is finished relitigating the saga, finished talking about Qatar, finished talking about his coach, his parents, the report. He says, simply, that he just wants to play football. And in front of him is the stage his entire life pointed toward. The 2026 World Cup, co-hosted on home United States soil. A tournament that will play in stadiums an hour from where he grew up in New Jersey, in front of the same family that almost destroyed his career, under the same coach who benched him. No American footballer has ever walked into a World Cup with more to prove, and less left to lose. The records still exist. The youngest American in the Bundesliga, the youngest in the Champions League, the kid who outpaced Pulisic before he could legally drink. Last World Cup, 52 minutes. This one, whatever happens, won't be a footnote. He was born into the bloodline. He inherited the talent. He carried the weight of a scandal he didn't start. And now, finally, all that's left is the foot. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Beyond the Boots for more. The boots tell the story. We just follow the footsteps.